Writ of possession. Court permission for sheriff to forcibly remove a tenant. In an eviction, after the long process of legal eviction, the last step is for the sheriff to forcibly remove a tenant from a property by physical force. This last step requires a writ of possession, which is an order from the judge which is given to the sheriff to remove the tenant being evicted by force. In most cases, legal eviction does not come to this last step, but ends somewhere prior to this last step. Most tenants realize that not paying rent means they have to leave the premises, and it is more amenable to leave under one's own decision than to be hauled out by officers. Nonetheless, a writ of possession is a court permission for the sheriff to forcibly remove a tenant. Implied agency. Agency relationship established by actions or behavior. Agency in real estate has the seller or the buyer as the principal, and the broker or his associate broker/agents as the agent. Even though the statute of frauds requires that real estate agreements be put in writing, if the actions of the principal (either the seller or the buyer) make someone believe that a broker (or his associate broker/agents) is his agent, then he is the principal's agent. As an example, say a seller talks to his friend broker about selling his house. A neighbor happens to walk by, and the broker says to the neighbor, quote, "My name is broker. Would you like to buy seller's house?" End quote. During this time, the seller stands by, knowingly listening, and does nothing to contradict the conversation between the broker and the neighbor. An agency relationship has been established by implied agency or apparent agency. Now the agent has the professional obligation to carry through with the agency if the neighbor wants to buy the home. Additionally, the agent might have some challenges collecting a commission, as there is no listing agreement in writing according to law. Nonetheless, the agency relationship is established by implied agency. Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA of 1990. Federal law protecting individuals with disabilities. The Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, ADA, imposed sweeping changes by defining a handicap as any physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. Under the ADA, people with such handicaps have rights. It is important in real estate because a structure has the ability to impact such handicapped persons. Many aspects of real estate are impacted by the Act as dictated by building codes which are controlled locally. The ADA is a 1990 federal law which protects individuals with disabilities. Appraiser Qualifications Board, AQB. Appraiser requirements for state licensing. The Appraiser Qualifications Board, AQB, has the responsibility of developing the qualification criteria for appraiser state licensing. Within this group is the Appraisal Standards Board, ASB, who is responsible for developing and maintaining the standards for the appraisal industry, which are called the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, USPAP. Related words, Appraisal Standards Board, ASB. Airspace, space occupied by a second-story condominium. If a person buys a condominium which is on the second floor, how can it be said he is buying property? The condo is up in the air. The condo owner on the first floor might own the property below, but not the second floor owner. What about the third floor owner? Land includes surface rights, water rights, mineral rights, and airspace. Airspace is the air above a segment of land. So airspace is the space above a piece of land, and it can be bought and sold too. Contract. Legally enforceable agreement between competent parties. Contracts emerged because people have such a hard time understanding what they are agreeing to. The rules of contracts are for the purpose of clarifying the agreement. Express contracts are written or spoken. Implied contracts are from actions or conduct. Bilateral contracts are a promise for a promise, and unilateral contracts are one way. Executory contracts are contracts in process, parentheses not complete yet, end parentheses, and executed contracts are completed. Void contracts are not legally enforceable, and voidable are able to be made void by one or both parties but remain in force until voided. Ratified means signed. Mutual consent means no one is forced. Meeting of the minds means agreement. Consideration is the thing of value offered. The statute of frauds requires that a contract be in writing for real estate. A contract is a legally enforceable agreement between two competent parties. Synonyms: agreement. Bilateral contract. Agreement for a promise for a promise. A bilateral contract is an agreement for a promise for a promise. This means that if a buyer agrees to buy a seller's property, then the buyer has agreed to pay the seller the price, and the seller has agreed to turn over the property. Quote, buy, B-I, end quote, means two, and this is a contract with two promises. Quote, uni, U-N-I, end quote, means one, and therefore a unilateral contract is an agreement with only a single promise. The classic example is the offer of a reward for a lost pet. The pet owner is promising to pay if the pet is found, but the finder is not making any promises. The finder of the pet may search for the pet or not. There is no obligation. However, if the pet is found, the owner has promised to pay the reward. A unilateral contract is a one-way promise. A bilateral contract is an agreement for and in two directions, a promise for a promise. Promissory note, piece of paper promising to repay a loan. A promissory note is a piece of paper containing the details of a promise to repay a loan. A promissory note will contain essential elements like who is making the promise and who the promise is to, how much the loan is for, and if there is any interest due, and over what time period, parentheses term, end parentheses, the loan is to be repaid. A promissory note is a piece of paper promising to repay a loan. Collateral. Something of value used to secure a loan. Collateral is used as security, so if a loan is not paid, the lender can take the collateral to pay back losses from the unpaid loan. In real estate, the property is the collateral for the loan used to buy the property. This is typical for car loans also. The car is collateral for the loan used to buy the car. If the loan is not paid, the finance company comes and gets the car, called repossession. It is trickier with a car because a car can be moved. A property does not move, so using the property as collateral makes perfect sense. Hypothecation is the idea that the borrower gets to keep and use the collateral. With a pawnshop loan, personal property collateral is held by the lender, parentheses the pawnshop, end parentheses, until the loan is repaid. Collateral is something of value used to secure a loan. Related words: hypothecate, repossession. Voluntary lien. Willingly using property as security for a loan. A mortgage or a trust deed are examples of voluntary liens. Taking a loan to buy a property with the property as collateral, the lender now has an interest in the property. A lien is when a person or entity has an interest in real property who is not the owner. So a voluntary lien is acceptable because the buyer gets to buy and use the property. Examples of involuntary liens are mechanics liens, tax liens, judgments, and attachments. A voluntary lien is willingly allowing a non-owner to take interest in a real property. Synonyms: mortgage, trust deed. Antonyms: mechanics lien, tax lien, judgment, attachment. Related words: hypothecate.